Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This past week, I received a ton of comments just like these.
Wang An writes, "Hey, why are the experts' economic forecasts always wrong?"
Another viewer, username Critical Thinker, asked, I see the government issue policy A, but then the market reacts in some unpredictable way Z.
Is economics just empty theory? I read every comment. And I understand your skepticism. We constantly hear about models and forecasts, but then reality unfolds in a completely different way.
It feels like we're trying to use yesterday's map to navigate today's roads.
And I'm here to tell you, that skepticism is completely justified. There is a classic mistake, a mental trap, that even the most brilliant economists have fallen into. But I assure you, with all my credibility, once you understand this trap, you'll not only see why policies often fail, but you'll also see how the world works in a completely new light.
So, in today's video, we are going to dissect this critical error.
We'll have two main parts. In part one, we'll explore the origin of this error through two classic allegories.
The story of American football and the story of the free cereal boxes.
And in part two, far more importantly, we'll see how this mental trap is playing out right before our eyes in the modern world.
From inflation and AI to cryptocurrency.
Now, before we start, I must emphasize this. Part 2, where we apply these theories to the reality of 2024, is the real payoff.
It will explain why the complete forecasting models of central banks have crumbled. So make sure you watch until the end.
To understand this core mistake, we need to define it. Forget the complex terms. Imagine this, you're a data analyst
And you discover an ironclad rule. On the fourth down, 95% of teams choose to punt the ball. You're confident in your discovery.
The data doesn't lie.
But here's the problem. In economics and in life, we aren't just analyzing a finished game.
We are living inside a game where the rules can change.
The American Nobel laureate, Robert Lucas, pointed out a flaw that became known as the Lucas critique.
He said, "You cannot use past data to predict future behavior if the rules of the game have changed." Why? Because human beings are not robots. We think, we have expectations,
And we change our strategies to adapt to the new rules.
But from Bristol. What we're about to analyze today isn't theory for university professors. It's for...
This isn't about real estate. It isn't about stocks. It's about the fundamental laws of human behavior.
Now, let's begin with the first classic mistake, which I rank at number 4.
Let's return to our football story. An economist is hired by the league president to make the game more exciting.
After analyzing hundreds of games, he confidently reports, "Mr. President, I've found the pattern." Teams almost always punt on the fourth down. This play style is very boring. Hearing this, the president decides to change the rules. Instead of 4 downs, each team now only gets 3. He believes he has eliminated that boring punt play.
But what was the result? The teams immediately switched to punting on. The third down.
Many people hearing this would say, wow, that economist is an amateur.
But wait, think about it. Was he statistically wrong?
No, his data was perfectly accurate.
Under the old rules, teams did indeed punt on 4th down.
His mistake wasn't technical, it was conceptual. He fell for the so-called static model fallacy.
He only described a relationship within a system with fixed rules.
When the rules changed, the player's behavior changed too, and his entire data set became meaningless.
This is like using last year's weather data for Saigon to forecast this year's weather in Hanoi. Completely wrong. In reality, governments constantly make this mistake. They look at past data, see a correlation, and then create a policy to steer that correlation, forgetting that their very action will break it.
To understand this better, let's move to our second classic mistake, an even clearer example. I rank it at number 3.
Imagine a government wants to stimulate cereal consumption. They hire another economist.
After surveying thousands of households, this economist reports a fantastic discovery. The average family buys exactly 2 boxes of cereal per month.
Traditional economic models, based on decades of data, predicted that such sharp rate hikes would certainly.
They expect that with 2 boxes bought and 2 given, total consumption will rise to 4 boxes. A perfect plan on paper.
But can you guess what happened?
That's right. The families immediately stopped buying cereal. They just used the 2 free boxes. Total consumption didn't double. It stayed the same. The policy completely failed.
Many of you might think, this is a scam, they're exploiting the policy. But no, this isn't fraud.
And this is a completely rational economic behavior. It's called behavioral substitution. When you give something away for free, people will adjust their behavior to optimize their benefit. They have no reason to pay for something they can get for free. And this isn't just a theoretical story. Look at reality. During the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, the US government sent out stimulus checks directly to people. They expected people to use this money for spending.
To revive the economy. Past data showed that with more income, people increased their spending.
But the rules of the game had changed. This wasn't an earned salary. It was money from the sky in a very uncertain future.
People reacted strategically. Instead of spending, what did the majority do with that money? They saved it, paid off debt, or invested it. The actual stimulus effect was much weaker than what economic models based on old data had predicted.
Or in Vietnam, price stabilization programs can face similar issues. If a policy doesn't account for public reaction,
or resale for profit, distorting the market instead of stabilizing it.
Both of these stories lead us to the heart of the problem, Robert Lucas's critique.
He pointed out that old economic models were often wrong because they assumed people would behave passively like statistics.
But no, humans have rational expectations. We anticipate what the government will do and act preemptively.
The most classic example is the relationship between inflation and unemployment.
In the 1960s, economists believed they had found the holy grail. A government could accept a little more inflation.
Just print more money, stimulate the economy, and people get jobs. But as governments repeatedly abused this policy, people and businesses started to figure out the game. They anticipated that the government would print money again. What did they do? They raised prices and demanded higher wages in advance. The result was that in the 1970s, America fell into a nightmare that old models said was impossible: stagflation.
at a state of rampant inflation, while unemployment remained high.
The beautiful correlation from the past had completely collapsed, simply because the players understood the new rules.
So, does this mistake still happen in our modern world? Absolutely! And that's the scary part. Look at the fight against inflation, the rise of AI, and the labor market from 2022 to 2025. After the pandemic, inflation in the US and Europe soared. Central banks, led by the US Federal Reserve,
began to raise interest rates aggressively.
Traditional economic models, based on decades of data, predicted that such sharp rate hikes would certainly
cause companies to stop hiring, lay off staff en masse, push unemployment up, and send the economy into a recession.
That was the price to be paid to cool down inflation.
But something strange happened.
The Fed kept hiking rates, but the unemployment rate remained at a record low. The economy didn't fall into a deep recession.
Why was the model wrong?
Because businesses, the players in the game, didn't behave as they had in the past.
Instead of firing employees as costs rose, they reacted strategically. They accelerated automation and AI adoption
to boost productivity and cut long-term personnel costs. The rules of the game now had a new element. Technology and business behavior changed to adapt.
They weren't playing by the old script anymore. This is a living, modern-day proof of the Lucas critique.
Or let's look at the world of cryptocurrency.
Whenever a government announces a new regulation, economists looking only at domestic centralized exchange data will conclude that the market is shrinking.
But what's the reality? The market isn't shrinking, it's just moving. When the US tightened regulations on exchanges like Coinbase in 2023, the money immediately flowed heavily.
When China banned Bitcoin mining, the miners didn't disappear. They just relocated to Kazakhstan, to America. This behavior is exactly like that football team. They didn't give up on scoring. They just changed their tactic from the 4th down to the 3rd. The players in the crypto market don't give up. They just move from one playground to another with more favorable rules.
So what's the final lesson here? Economics cannot just be about numbers and mathematical equations.
It must return to its essence, a science of human behavior.
The best economists aren't the ones who draw the prettiest charts, but the ones who can tell the most logical story about human motives, expectations, and strategies.
They have to understand that people are not just data points from the past.
We are rational players who think, react, and are always finding ways to adapt in a constantly changing world.
So, through the story of the football game and the cereal boxes.
We've seen a classic thinking error, believing the future will be a repetition of the past.
And forgetting that our own actions will change that future. Humans always adapt to new rules.
And my final piece of advice, don't just trust the statistics.
Always ask yourself, if the rules change, how will the people involved behave?
Start thinking like a player in the game, not someone reviewing the tape.
Rewatch this video a few more times to really absorb this mindset.
Because once you understand it, you'll see that opportunities always appear where forecasting models can't see.
Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Hatiane Lu. See you next week.